There's a plant growing in the cracks of your driveway right now. You've stepped on it. You've yanked it out. Your neighbor probably sprayed it last weekend. It has thick, fleshy leaves that taste slightly lemony, and you've been treating it like garbage your entire life. Inside that plant, the one you keep killing, is more omega-3 fatty acid than wild Alaskan salmon, more than fish oil capsules, more than every plant nutritionists have ever measured. NASA studied it as a perfect food for long space missions. Mahatma Gandhi grew it on his ashram and ate it every single day. Greek peasants survived famines on it for centuries. In Mexico City, grandmothers still cook it with eggs for breakfast. And in modern America, garden centers sell weed killer specifically designed to wipe it off the face of your lawn. The plant is purslane. It's been called a weed for so long that almost nobody remembers it was once one of the most prized greens on Earth. Today, you're about to find out what they took from you and how to take it back. The Gandhi connection and NASA's documented interest in nutrient-dense, self-sustaining crops for long-duration missions. We'll come back to both. But first, the archive. Because this plant's story doesn't start in the 20th century. It doesn't even start in the 19th. It starts in a clay vessel in northern Greece, sealed shut in 1050 BCE. Someone in northern Greece filled a clay vessel with seeds, small seeds, black, thousands of them, sealed it, buried it, and vanished into history. 3,000 years later, archaeologists pried it open. The seeds were exactly where they'd been placed, perfectly preserved, instantly recognizable. The same plant was still growing between the stones outside. The same plant that's growing in your driveway right now. Those seeds are one of the oldest confirmed records of Portulaca oleracea in Europe, dated to 1050 BCE, 3 centuries before Homer composed the Iliad. But they're not the beginning. They're simply the oldest container we've found. 7 centuries later, seeds of the same plant appear at the Samian Heraion, one of the most sacred sanctuaries in ancient Greece, dedicated to Hera, used for worship, commerce, and civilization's most important rituals. This wasn't a plant found at the margins. It was present at the center. But the trail reaches much further back and much further east. Evidence of cultivation stretches at least 4,000 years, through the eastern Mediterranean, through Western Asia, to ancient Egypt, where it grew alongside onions and garlic as a dietary staple, to the Indian subcontinent, where Ayurvedic practitioners documented it for inflammation, fever, and liver complaints, and to China, where it earned a name it still carries today. Something bigger was happening. Across every civilization where humans grew food, they grew this plant. The question is why? And the answer isn't poetic, it's biochemical. In traditional Chinese medicine, purslane is called ma qi xian, the vegetable for long life. This system was refined over 3 millennia. It classified every plant by its relationship to the body's vital systems. And in that system, purslane wasn't a footnote, it was foundational. Practitioners prescribed it to cool the blood, neutralize toxins, and treat everything from eczema to cardiovascular inflammation. Not occasionally, routinely, generation after generation. In a medical tradition that outlasted every empire around it, this plant held a primary position. The World Health Organization has since designated it one of the most widely used medicinal plants on Earth. They placed it in a category called global panacea. That's not a compliment, that's a classification. And that classification, from the world's leading public health institution, was handed to the same plant that Bayer and Syngenta sell herbicide products to destroy. In the 4th century BCE, a man named Theophrastus cataloged the plants of the known world. He was Aristotle's successor. His work became the foundation of Western botany. In that catalog, he named purslane as one of the summer pot herbs that must be sown every April. Not suggested, must. The Romans absorbed this completely. They expanded it across every province they conquered. Pliny the Elder documented over 50 medical applications for purslane. He recommended it so emphatically he wrote it should be worn as an amulet against evil. This was Gaius Plinius Secundus, the man who died in 79 AD trying to observe Vesuvius from a boat, the greatest naturalist of the ancient world. And his pharmacy of choice was the plant you spray with Roundup. His contemporary, Pedanius Dioscorides, included it in De Materia Medica. That text remained authoritative for 1,500 years, 15 centuries, one plant. From Hippocrates in 460 BCE, through Theophrastus, through Pliny and Dioscorides, through medieval monks growing it in physic gardens. An unbroken chain of testimony. This wasn't a weed, this was a cornerstone. So what changed? The answer isn't in the ancient world. It's in a laboratory in 1992, and in a boardroom much more recently than that. In 1992, Dr. Artemis Simopoulos published an analysis of Purslane. She was a physician and nutritional advisor to the United States government. The journal was the American College of Nutrition. The data was so unusual that colleagues immediately questioned whether the samples had been contaminated. They hadn't been. Fresh purslane leaves contain between 300 and 400 milligrams of alpha-linolenic acid per 100 grams. That's the essential omega-3 fatty acid. Forensically, 4 milligrams per gram, wet weight. Spinach, the food nutritionists tell you to eat for plant-based nutrients, contains 0.89 milligrams per gram. Mustard greens, 0.48. Red leaf lettuce, 0.31. Iceberg lettuce, so low that purslane contains 15 times more. In total fatty acid content, purslane delivers 8.5 milligrams per gram of fresh weight. Spinach delivers 1.7. Mustard greens, 1.1. Red leaf lettuce, 0.7. These aren't close comparisons. These are different biological categories. And then there's the finding that nearly broke the conversation entirely. EPA, eicosapentaenoic acid, the long-chain marine omega-3, the one found in wild salmon, in fish oil capsules, in the deep-water algae that fish eat and concentrate in their tissue. Land plants don't make EPA. This is foundational biochemistry. The enzymatic pathways required for EPA synthesis don't exist in terrestrial plant species. Fish produce EPA, plants produce ALA. This is taught in every nutrition program on the planet. Purslane apparently wasn't informed. Simopoulos' 1992 analysis detected EPA in purslane tissue. When she published this, it triggered a years-long argument in nutritional science. Other laboratories independently confirmed the finding. The EPA was real. A land plant, growing unassisted from a crack in a sidewalk, was producing a molecule biochemistry had classified as exclusively marine. In 1986, Dr. Simopoulos and Norman Salem had published the initial finding in the New England Journal of Medicine. The framing was straightforward: purslane as a terrestrial source of omega-3 fatty acids. The scientific community responded with silence. Not because the finding was wrong, because the finding had no industrial sponsor to amplify it. Here's what they didn't advertise. Purslane also provides 6 times more vitamin E than spinach, 7 times more beta-carotene than carrots, melatonin in measurable concentrations, the sleep hormone produced in a plant, and potassium at 429 milligrams per 100 grams. 20 years later, a team at Yale would open a different, impossible chapter. But first, you need to understand the Cretans. In the 1950s, an international project called the 7-Country Study surveyed heart disease across populations in Europe, America, and Japan. The data from Crete was an anomaly. Cretan men had the lowest cardiovascular mortality of any population studied, lower than the Japanese. Their cardiovascular disease rates were roughly half those of Northern European comparison groups. For 2 decades, researchers credited olive oil. It was elegant, it was marketable. Olive oil became a global industry. But something didn't add up. When researchers later analyzed frozen blood samples from the original Cretan participants, the Cretans showed 3 times the omega-3 levels of the Dutch comparison group. They weren't eating 3 times more fish. They were eating purslane in salads, in stews, sautéed with olive oil and garlic, and feeding it to their chickens and goats. That meat and those eggs carried the same elevated omega-3 profile. The health miracle of the Cretan diet wasn't reducible to olive oil. It was built, in significant part, on a plant those Cretan farmers considered too ordinary to mention. The researchers went home. The olive oil industry expanded. And in 2022, a team at Yale published findings that reframed every conversation about this plant from the beginning. So why don't we see purslane in every grocery store, every nutritionist meal plan, every public health omega-3 campaign? The answer isn't complicated. It's not a hidden document or a classified meeting. It's simply the logic of any system organized around profit. Purslane can't be owned. Field studies suggest a single plant can reportedly produce up to 200,000 seeds. Those seeds can remain viable in soil for decades. It grows in compacted soil, in drought conditions, in rocky ground where every cultivated crop fails. It requires no fertilizer, no pesticide treatment, no irrigation infrastructure, no proprietary seed purchase, no supply chain dependency of any kind. You can't build a subscription model around it. You can't create product loyalty when the product regenerates from seeds that have been in your soil since before your house was built. Not because it failed, because it succeeded without anyone's permission. The global herbicide market was valued at $44.2 billion in 2024. Bayer, Syngenta, BASF, and Corteva all sell products formulated to eliminate broadleaf weeds. Purslane is a broadleaf weed. You can't sell herbicides for a plant people are growing for dinner. You can't sell fish oil capsules to a population that recognizes omega-3s growing free in every garden. You can't sell flaxseed oil supplements, which go rancid within weeks, when the alternative grows wild in every climate where humans have ever lived. You can't generate pharmaceutical-grade profit from inflammation treatments when the anti-inflammatory plant costs nothing and can't be patented. That's not conspiracy. That's economics with a body count. Omega-3 deficiency has been documented in 70 to 80% of Western populations. Heart disease remains the leading cause of death across the industrialized world. Every year, millions of people fill prescriptions and buy supplements to address a deficiency that a free, self-seeding plant, known since Hippocrates, documented since Dioscorides, could structurally prevent. And the system that produces those supplements also produces the herbicide formulations marketed against that plant. The same corporations, different product lines. The erasure wasn't theatrical, it was bureaucratic. And that makes it more effective. Purslane doesn't appear on any nutrition label you've ever read. It's absent from every USDA recommended foods list. It isn't mentioned in any public health campaign addressing omega-3 deficiency, even as those campaigns recommend fish oil supplements from corporations with herbicide divisions. The classification is simple. Purslane is listed in agricultural extension guides across the United States as a target broadleaf weed. Those guides recommend glyphosate-based treatments, trifluralin pre-emergent applications, and multiple pass protocols. University of California Extension documentation acknowledges that purslane is extremely difficult to control with a single application. Read that carefully. They admit the plant is extremely difficult to kill. They've been publishing updated guides on how to kill it more effectively for 50 years. The plant is still in your driveway. Purslane is classified as an invasive weed in 73 countries. Let's look at what that word actually means. Invasive means self-sustaining without human management, self-spreading without industrial investment, drought-resistant without irrigation infrastructure. Purslane grows where corn would wither. It survives on roughly 1/5 the water that commercial corn crops require. And in 2022, researchers at Yale explained precisely why. The study was published on August 5th in Science Advances, led by postdoctoral scholars Jose Moreno Villena and Haoran Zhou. Senior author, Professor Erica J. Edwards of Yale. Their finding, Purslane simultaneously operates two photosynthetic systems, C4 and CAM, not separately in different tissues, as scientists had assumed, integrated completely within the same cells. C4 photosynthesis is what makes corn and sugarcane productive under heat. CAM is what allows cacti to survive desert conditions. No other plant on Earth has been documented running both in the same cells simultaneously. Edwards called it a very rare combination of traits. In her words, a kind of superplant. The result? Exceptional productivity, exceptional drought tolerance. Both. In one organism. In the weed you spray every spring. Here's what the agricultural system didn't tell you. The plant they publish eradication guides for has already solved the food security problem that climate scientists say will define the next century. It grows free. It withstands drought. It produces food-grade omega-3 fatty acids. And it was doing all of this before the Roman Empire fell. Half the world never stopped eating purslane. The knowledge didn't disappear, it migrated. In Mexico, the plant is called verdolagas. It appears in traditional markets alongside corn and tomatoes. Grandmothers cook it with pork, with eggs, with chili peppers, in recipes that predate European contact, carried forward through every generation since. In Turkey, it's baked into pastries and cooked with yogurt. In Greece, it's tossed raw into summer salads with feta, olive oil, and cucumber. The same preparation documented among the Cretan families in the 1950s. The same families whose blood samples confounded researchers for 20 years. In Egypt, stewed with lentils. In Pakistan, cooked with tomatoes and spices. In China, dried and incorporated into TCM formulas written and rewritten for 3,000 years. Notice what is not happening in any of these places. No government subsidy for purslane cultivation. No research funding directed toward optimizing it as a food system. No pharmaceutical company developing a purslane-derived omega-3 product. Agricultural extension offices in the United States are still, as of 2024, publishing updated eradication guides. The knowledge survived not because institutions preserved it. It survived because grandmothers cooked it. And grandmothers are a lot harder to regulate than laboratories. Purslane is easy to identify. The stems are thick, reddish-brown, and succulent, never hairy. That's important. The look-alike plant to avoid is spurge. Spurge has hairy stems and milky sap when broken. Purslane's interior is juicy and nearly translucent when you snap a stem. The leaves are paddle-shaped, fleshy, dark green. They grow flat along the stem, spreading across the ground. The flavor is bright, lemony, slightly salty. The same profile that made it the standard salad green across the Mediterranean for 3,000 years, before olive oil became the marketable headline. It grows horizontally from a single taproot in a flat mat pattern. In summer, small yellow flowers appear tucked between the leaves. Eat it raw in salads. It adds crunch and a citrusy lift. Sauté in olive oil with garlic, around 90 seconds, for a wilted side dish. Add it to scrambled eggs. Drop it into soups as a thickener. It becomes slightly gelatinous when cooked, which is exactly what makes it useful in broth-based dishes. The seeds are edible. The flowers are edible. The entire plant, leaves, stems, buds, is food. It grows in your garden without being planted. It comes back every year from seeds already in the soil. The only tool required to access it is the decision to stop treating it like a problem. This isn't about purslane. This is about who decides what is food. The difference between a weed and a vegetable isn't biochemistry. It's not history, not nutritional analysis, not what Yale publishes in peer-reviewed journals, not what the World Health Organization calls a global panacea. The difference is a classification decision made by people whose revenue depends on the alternative. Every person who learns to recognize purslane becomes harder to sell an omega-3 supplement to. Every garden that harvests it instead of spraying it no longer funds the $44.2 billion industry built on its destruction. Every grandmother who never stopped cooking verdolagas preserved, through the act of cooking dinner, something that a multi-industry infrastructure spent 50 years trying to erase. This plant reportedly produces up to 200,000 seeds. Those seeds can stay viable in soil for decades. The herbicide industry has been formulating products specifically against it for half a century. The plant is still in every crack, every driveway, every disturbed garden bed on every continent except Antarctica. It didn't win because it was protected. It won because it doesn't require permission to exist. Not because it was defiant, because it was simply built that way. Before the Roman Empire, before the word weed existed, before any of the systems designed to remove it from your awareness were assembled. Every person who walks past their driveway and now sees food instead of a problem becomes a little harder to control. Not dramatically, not loudly, just harder to manage. That's enough. That's always been enough. If this vault opens something for you, subscribe to Nature Unearthed. Every week we open the vault on a plant, a system, or a piece of knowledge that someone tried to bury. Next, we're investigating the wild herb that 3 separate clinical trials showed lowering blood pressure, while agricultural extension offices still list it as a yard pest. You don't want to miss that one. Share this video, hit the bell, and keep the knowledge alive, because every view is an act of preservation.